My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my ranking of the Hunger Games movies. I'm actually a big defender of this franchise, and I've never gotten the hate behind it. I know it's not the most action heavy franchise, but it's never trying to be. It's always been more of a reflection on a corrupt government and the systems at play to keep them in power, and I think it does a great job at that. Also, I need to address the number one complaint this franchise gets, and that's the love triangle. I see a lot of people complaining about it, and it's hardly present in the movies. It maybe makes up for 1% of the whole franchise, but that's about it. Like, if you watched the movie and you were like, oh, who's Katniss gonna pick? Gale or Peeta? Then you watched the movie wrong. That's not what the movie's about. It's present, but it's hardly existent at all, and I feel like the criticisms revolving around that are completely overblown. But let's begin with the ranking. In last place is the very first Hunger Games, which is odd because the first movie is usually first or second, but it is my least favorite of the four. That said, I still really like this movie. I think it's a great introduction to these characters, the themes, this world, and Jennifer Lawrence really does become Katniss Everdeen. She feels so genuine in this role, whether it's her sense of humor or her acts of kindness, you instantly gravitate towards her. But my favorite cast member in this movie is Woody Harrelson. Every time he's on screen, it just lights up. He feels so genuine, and his sense of humor is definitely welcomed, and in an otherwise depressing movie. I also like what Gary Ross brings to this movie. I know people complain about the shaky camera, but I actually think it brings a sense of realism, and I like the use of colors throughout, especially when Effie Trinket's sitting there in District 12 and she's in bright pinks, this giant wig, all dolled up and all that, and then everything else is just a miserable looking gray. It really represents what's going on in a really immersive way, in a very visual way, and I think the movie does a great job with that. The Hunger Games themselves aren't as action heavy as you would have liked, but I do think they do a good job of setting up everything that comes into play later. I would have maybe liked a bit more action. Katniss hides in a tree for a good bunch. I think this movie could have been R rated, especially when how much of this movie carries on into other movies. If this movie had an R rating, I think it could have added something extra. Also, there's one moment that bothers me where Katniss shoots an arrow, she blows up some of the enemy's food, and she's just lying there. Everybody comes and they're like, what happened to our food? And Katniss is just lying there and they can't see her for some reason. It always bothered me. But also, one more positive I want to point out before I go on to my next movie is that the soundtrack for this movie is absolute, like 10 out of 10. The Arcade Fire song in the credits, amazing. The Taylor Swift song, so good. Just go to Apple Music, download the entire soundtrack. The music in this movie is fantastic, and it's definitely a good first movie. Okay, from this point forward are movies that I straight out love. Like, I love 3, 2, 1. I think this is a great franchise. So, in third place, I feel bad putting it in third, but it's The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. And the thing is that I actually didn't like this movie the first time I watched it. I was just like, yes, I can't wait to watch Katniss and go to the Capitol and kill President Snow. I was so excited for that, and that never happened. And I was really let down by that at a first watch. But I just rewatched it for the first time since, and of course my tastes have grown since then. And I love how subversive this movie is. Instead of being a typical good versus evil movie, instead it kind of blurs the line between good and evil, and I think it does a really good job with that. It goes into, it explores the roots of characters' motivations, how to prevent what happened to from happening again, and I think it explores that in very fascinating ways that instantly compel you. And Julianne Moore and Donald Sutherland are both excellent here, and I would say that Jennifer Lawrence is once again the star, but I think Josh Hutcherson steals this entire movie. What his character is going through in this movie, Josh Hutcherson really brings to life. You feel how conflicted he is. is, and I just think his character is so well written here. The action in this movie is excellent. There's a scene in the sewers where it goes full out horror, and I love it. And then immediately afterwards, it goes into this fast-paced action moment, and it's always been one of my favorite cuts. It's just those 3 minutes are just so exciting, and it's my favorite stuff in this entire movie. I think it ends on a very emotional note. The only reason why it's in last, well, not last place, second to last place, is because it is a little too slow in moments. I think you could have trimmed about 10-15 minutes out of this movie. But that aside, I think this is a terrific finale in every possible way. I love it. In second place is The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. From the very beginning of this movie, where Katniss goes to Finnick and he says that he wishes she was dead, he wishes he was dead, he wishes Peeta and Annie were dead, you just feel the weight of everything here. And instead of being hopeful and optimistic, it basically just shows you that things aren't going to get better here. They're about to get even worse. I love how this movie allows the events from the previous movie, those moments to have weight that carry into this movie, but still not immediately rush into the action finale of the last movie. This feels like a proper bridge between the two. It allows moments to have impact. It allows the characters to take everything in. And especially how Katniss gets used and how Peeta gets used, both for the political gains. This is a movie that starts to blur the line between good and bad. How it takes Katniss's reactions to genuinely awful events and how they market that as a tool for themselves. And how even though the motive is good, they're doing it at a cost. And I just think it's portrayed brilliantly here. There's a scene where Katniss starts singing a song, The Hanging Tree, and it carries over into this march onto a dam in this action sequence, and it's pure movie magic. The music, the excitement, the stakes, you feel it all. You know, every time I watch it, I gain chills. In fact, in that scene, I always say, like, just the look and the feeling of that scene is how I wish Star Wars felt nowadays. There's also this amazing air raid sequence where I will admit that it's a bit contrived, but it's still thrilling, it's intense, and James Newton Howard's score just carries that scene perfectly. In fact, it carries the entire movie perfectly. This is my favorite musical score by James Newton Howard out of the 4 movies, and I just think this movie has it all. It has stakes, it's emotional, it's intense, it's trying to say something on propaganda and how it's used, and it definitely ends on a note where you can't wait for the next movie. So I love this movie, and it comes in at number 2. But my favorite movie is The Hunger Games Catching Fire. You know how I said I love the soundtrack for the first movie? Well, I'll never forget that at the end of this second movie, there was a song by Of Monsters and Men in the credits, Silhouettes, and after this movie, I was going to go see The Desolation of Smaug, and everyone in the theater left after 2 minutes after the movie ended, but I'm just like, no, I have to listen to that song. And I looked over and I see that there's 2 theater employees waiting for me to leave, so I'm like, okay, no biggie, I'll just sit here and watch the entire credits so I can listen to my song. And then as soon as the credits were finished, I left the theater and I turned the corner and I see there's like 20 theater employees waiting for me to leave, and I'm just like, oops, sorry guys, but that said, it's an amazing song. But this movie has always been my favorite. I just think it does everything that this franchise does to its best degree here. It's a thrilling, intense action movie, but it also holds emotional weight. Everything in this movie, every twist and turn the story takes, you feel the weight up, and it's constantly heartbreaking throughout. There is so many emotional stuff going on, and it affects the characters, and just the more the story progresses, the more the characters break down, and you completely understand why, and you feel the weight and the consequences of everything that happened in the first movie carrying over into this movie, like a proper sequel does. Watching this chess game between Katniss and President Snow is just fascinating. You're always trying to predict what the next person's going to do, and Jennifer Lawrence is absolutely amazing here. This is the best performance of hers in this franchise. She just brings it to life beautifully from the very get-go when she's doing the Victor's tour, you feel just everything. And I've already said that a lot about this entire franchise, but this is definitely the most emotional movie of the bunch. But it's also got some of the best action of the bunch. Even though it's not the typical, humans fighting, it's got poisonous fog, it's got monkeys, it's got a spinning clock mechanism. That stuff I think is some really exciting stuff that doesn't fall into franchise cliches. And then the ending of this movie, it's shocking. I remember the first time I saw it, I was just like, wait, what just happened? And then the way it purposely sets up the next movie in the franchise, it just does all that so perfectly. This is maybe one of the best blockbusters of the past decade. I love it. I love this entire franchise. And that's my ranking on the Hunger Games movies. But what's your ranking of the Hunger Games franchise? Comment down below. Is it 1, 4, 3, 2 like mine was? Or is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Or is it 4, 3, 2, 1? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for some more videos soon. Gavin out.